Okay, so just to clarify the distinction we made yesterday between the halachic Mashiach and the miraculous Mashiach. We mentioned this briefly yesterday, but the halacha always and must take into consideration what are the realities on the ground. That's how halacha operates. Halacha cannot rely on insev nes. When it does not rely on miracles, is a halachic definition. Halacha has to live within the parameters of the natural physical world. And therefore, the halachic version of Mashiach is a natural progression towards this perfected state of the world in which full halacha could be observed. Halacha and full Torah can be observed. One second. Halacha can be observed in a world without miracles. The Beis Mikdash is rebuilt. Jews live in Israel. There's a kingdom. We had it before the destruction. We weren't perfect at the time, and there were plenty of wars and terrible things. But we had a world that was primed for us to observe halacha in its full sense. And that's the halachic definition of Mashiach. That when Mashiach comes, we have a perfected state of the world that's undisputed. How do I know it's undisputed? I said this before. Because the Rambam writes, is the first and only one to codify the halachas of Mashiach's coming. Nobody else does that. He said this before, the Rambam B'chal was the first one to codify theology. And included in that is the theology of Mashiach's coming. Now nobody comes and says, you got the whole thing wrong. There are those who disagree with certain details of the order, and does Mashiach have to do this, doesn't have to do that. But the notion, the general idea, that the halachic version of Mashiach is that the world progresses in a natural state towards a halachically perfected world in which we can serve Hashem in completion with Karbanis and the Beis Mikdash and Shemitah and Yovel and all the rest of that. Nobody disputes that. Now, Torah is not only halacha. There's the midrashic part of Torah. There's all the other parts of Torah. And these other parts of Torah, as they get progressively more spiritual, have miraculous effects on this physical world. And therefore, that's what we were saying yesterday. Should Hashem choose to ignore the halachic process and do a miraculous process and take someone, Daniel Ish Chumdois, pluck him out of history and say, we're resurrecting you before Mashiach and making you Mashiach? Hashem can do it if he wants to. But that doesn't change the fact that Hashem here, in that version, would be breaking the halachic definition of what Mashiach is because he prefers a miraculous one. And that's perfectly fine and acceptable. That's what I want to make this distinction. Furthermore, it actually has a halachic implication for us today. At least in the way the Rabbi learns the Rambam. The way the Rabbi learns the Rambam, that the halachic definition of Mashiach is not just about what Mashiach has to do and what the world has to look like when Mashiach comes, but actually, in right at the beginning of the 11th chapter, 12th chapter, 11th chapter, where it begins the discussion of Mashiach. The Rambam has 11th chapter.
You did it yesterday, that's why it's in my mind right now.
The Rambam has the last two chapters of his book of halachas describe Mashiach, chapter 11 and chapter 12 of the laws of kings and their wars, and Hilchot Melachim Melchamaseim. And he opens up the 11th chapter by saying that one is required to believe in Mashiach's coming, is required to wait for him. Anybody who does not await Mashiach's coming denies Torah, denies Moshe. Very harsh words. Not just doesn't believe in him, but doesn't await his coming every day. Now the Rebbe argues that one can make the argument at least that most of the descriptions of what Mashiach is in the halachic sense isn't the description of what you have to do, it's a description of the state of the world. So where's the halacha? Where's the law?
Nothing is the case. You have to believe.
So what do you have to believe?
And you have to every day.
And wait. What is the Mashiach you have to wait for? Do I have to wait for David to be resurrected and come back because there's an opinion like that? No. I don't have to. It's a midrashic opinion. It may happen, may not happen. But I have to look at what the halachic definition of Mashiach and say that's what I need to wait for.
There will be a Mashiach.
And the halachic definition of what Mashiach does, which means when we describe Mashiach in a certain way, as a certain person, as a certain doing a certain accomplishments, those are the things I have to wait for. I have to wait for those accomplishments to happen. And the primary accomplishments all the accomplishments revolve around bringing the Jewish people and the world into a place where halacha can be fulfilled in its fullest, which is the building of the temple, Jews back in Israel, speaking of Shemitah and Yovel, cords, world peace. All these things, these are all pieces that are required to make this world in such a way where I can fulfill all of Torah and mitzvahs. And therefore, it's not just a description of Mashiach, but actually a halachic implication to me. What am I required by halacha to wait for? Even though there are many opinions, but because those opinions are in the midrashic space, like we said yesterday, we had opinion. If Mashiach is going to be, it might be Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, it might be Daniel Shchumdes. It's not just about details versus general. It's about which details versus which general. In other words, there are details you have to believe in. The detail that all Jews come back to Israel, you have to believe in that. Even though the temple is being rebuilt, so it's not just about details versus general. It's which details. Yeah. The details that revolve around the natural order of the halachic progression of the halachic building of Mashiach. That's what you are required in a halachic perspective to believe and wait for that to happen. The midrashic stuff, which are miraculous, in which Hashem can choose a donkey or clouds, a bunch of other things we described here.
Yeah, it's just amazing before.
Resurrection of the dead before or after. Resurrection of one tzaddik to come and redeem everybody else, and then resurrection of the rest of them. Resurrection 48. There's a whole bunch of opinions about these things. But those are not the halachic description of Mashiach. Those are midrashic / miraculous. And in that sense, Hashem can do whatever He wants. I'm not required to believe in any particular brand of that description. So, sorry?
Sorry. There's no halachic definition of a geula where the prerequisites are not achieved prior to Mashiach's coming. In other words, where Hashem deems it necessary because whatever our prayers or he just gets.
Sorry, that's it. We're making Mashiach coming
because we'll never get to that point that he kind of not imposes, but
Mitzrayim.
It's not a halachic definition of Mashiach, which means you're not required to wait for it. But halacha recognizes that it could happen, and that was the point that the Rambam writes that a kohen can't drink. That's the big proof. Even though the Rambam is a big halachist in describing the halachic version of Mashiach, which takes years and years and years to develop, he still says you can't drink because halacha accepts that it's possible Hashem will break the rule.
Oh, so there's two halachic roads then to Mashiach.
Right, but it's not. It's a nuance. It's not two halachic roads. It's more. There is one halachic road, but the halacha acknowledges that there are things that can transcend it. Say a miracle, and therefore halacha has to prepare for that miracle. Even though the halacha, in other words, am I required to believe that Hashem is going to break the rules and say Mashiach is coming right now miraculously? No. But what am I waiting for? The halacha? I'm waiting for the halachic definition that there's going to be a ingathering and a temple and all the rest of it. That's why I'm using this definition of what do I have to wait for? What do I have to expect? I'm required to expect and await this halachic version of Mashiach. Even though the halacha says, you know what, it's possible this whole thing won't happen and we're going to skip right to the end. It's a bit of a nuance there.
Yeah.
It's somewhat clear. In other words, there's a halachic definition
of believe and what you have to be prepared for in terms of the drinking.
Or what's possible. What's possible?
And how it
affects 1,000 things are possible.
Yeah,
and we might expect that possibility, like kohen not drinking.
Yeah.
But that's not a halach. But what we're expecting is extraordinary. But when we describe Mashiach as a halachic state of being, it's not extraordinary. Clear states it's not extraordinary. The world stays as it is, but we just have a perfected state so we can serve Hashem properly.
So kind of like making it my own. It's the same road, but it's got two paths come from the same road to get to the same destination.
That's correct.
The same destination is the same. It's always
that's correct.
The geula, but it's like the long shorter way or the short longer way. Whatever it is, it's the same road.
It is the same road.
Just the paths might.
Right. But one is
there may be different.
That's right. One is halachic and one is miraculous. But even when
the miraculous one is a derivation of the halachic.
So everything has to come down to halacha. And halacha has to take into consideration everything.
Converge at the end.
They have to converge at the end. Yeah. It's kind of like what we were saying yesterday. There's a spiritual progression towards Mashiach, and there's a halachic one. And the ultimate state of Mashiach is when these two converge. Right?
It's also the machlekes you have in the Gemara. Is the Messianic world miraculous, or is it aimed in the Shuv Malchus Bavai? It's the same kind of idea.
Right, so the Rambam clearly rules
he holds the
that
there's no difference.
There's no difference, that the world is natural.
That's right.
Right? And even though he describes that there will be miracles at the end, but that's not the halachic definition of Mashiach. Halachic definition
He's
of Mashiach.
going
by the strict halachic definition of Mashiach, even though there's a possibility, and therefore there's no distinction between our world and the next world, because it's just a perfected halachic state.
But the Gemara presents 2 points of view. One's the miraculous, one's the halachic one.
Remember, because the scope of the Gemara is beyond halacha.
Yeah.
There's midrashic Gemara.
Right,
and so there's miraculous description of Gemara also. Gemara is not limited to halacha. Rambam is limited to halacha. And he states so clearly, my job here is to clarify halacha.
Gemara is giving you two paths, giving you the halachic path, and giving you the midrashic path. The Rambam is codifying.
That's correct. And if that's what I was making yesterday, when you have to read every Gemara, you have to find out, are you talking halachic or the midrashic? And yesterday, when the Gemara gives options. Mashiach might be someone from living, someone who died. You clearly cannot be talking about the halachic Mashiach. Because you're talking halachic Mashiach, there's no options. Either is or isn't. And if we must be saying he's talking about a miraculous spiritual sense, and if God wants to, he can pick Daniel, for sure, why not? If he wants to, he can pick Yehuda Nasi, if he wants to, he can pick Yinun or Sheila or whatever it is.
Or according to Rishon, even David himself.
Or David himself, according to another opinion. Right?
Although more to the Sept, that's interesting.
Over here, the Gemara you say it's a different, which the Gemara we're about to get to. Which I'd like to get to today.
Yeah, but not the
which I'd like to get to today.
But it's a very good clarification. The halachic Mashiach and the miraculous
Mashiach.
How they convert, yes.
A group of any sect can say, this is my Mashiach.
We talked about that yesterday, and the answer is yes. If they're talking about
potential,
if they're talking about the spiritual idea of Mashiach, you could say this person is a Mashiach person in that he has brought about this world closer to the spiritual state of Mashiach, which has its effect in the halachic state as well, as we explained yesterday at length. Right? Because if Mashiach is about revealing godliness and revealing my neshama, one second, then if that person helped me reveal my neshama and help reveal godliness in this world, then that person effectively did Mashiach's work. Even if he didn't make it to the end of the line and being the halachic Mashiach, he still did the Mashiach work. And that we had this in the Gemara yesterday.
Okay, if group has each one said is Mashiach, that we can accept that there is 10 Mashiach?
No.
Again, each of these, there's hundreds of people throughout, thousands of people throughout history.
We'll do the Gemara. You weren't here yesterday. We did that Gemara. Each yeshiva.
Yeah, there are thousands of people throughout history.
Their Rashi was like Mashiach, but it's a role of Mashiach, not an actual.
There's thousands of people, including myself and including you, who through our mitzvahs and through our serving Hashem brought the world closer to Mashiach, right? So you played a role in Mashiach's coming.
We're not the Mashiach.
Because you have a neshama in you, and your neshama already lives Mashiach, because it's already connected to Hashem, and the question is if you revealed it, and the more you reveal it, the more Mashiach-like you are.
Yeah, Mashiach-like.
And that's what we explained yesterday at length.
Yes, we'll do more. You weren't here. We did yesterday.
Okay, let's look at the
Back to that point.
next Gemara, which talks about the role of Mashiach himself, and you alluded to one way of learning the Gemara. So I'm going to present the Gemara literally as it's stated and translate it, and the Rebbe has a long-standing pilpul, which covers years and years. They spoke about it once, and wrote about it in a letter, and wrote about it here and there, a number of places where the Rebbe discussed the next two lines of the Gemara, which I'll firstly read literally, and without going through the whole pilpul, I will share with you how the Rebbe learns that Gemara. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom of the page. The last word on the line is Asid, and if you go 5 words from the end of the line, it's Amar Rav Yehuda. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav. Asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God will in the future make or lahamid, to bring about or to uphold, to appoint, lahem, for them, for the Jewish people, David Acher, another David. So not David himself, but another one. Unlike the Yeshama you quoted earlier, which is David himself. But here it says David Acher, another David, another one, another guy like him. Remember, as the pasuk says, "V'ivdu es Hashem Eloheihem," and they will serve in the future time. They will God their Lord. There's David Malcolm, Asher Akim Lahem, and the King David that I will appoint for them or raise up for them. Hikim Lenemar doesn't say that they will serve the David that I have already appointed, which is the one we already had in history. El Akim that I will appoint for them. That's implying there's another King David that will be appointed. Another one.
More could have said that it'd be the same David. I will reinstate him, but they weren't going to give it a shot.
Didn't say that.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't say
Akim I will appoint. We're going to see how the Rebbe learns this. Okay. Amalei Papa Abaye. Papa says to Abaye. But V'Haksiv, the pasuk says that David Avdi Nasi Lam La'olam, that my servant David will be a Nasi, a leader or prince for them forever. Thus implying not a new David, but the same one. Doesn't say another David will be their prince. That's the word Nasi means, prince. But my servant David will be their prince. So is it another one, or is it the same one? So says the Gemara, Kagarin, like for example, Caesar Uparga Caesar. Caesar is the Roman name for like the Caesar, the king. The Caesar and a half Caesar, meaning a leader and a secondary. Melech b'sheni lo, Rashi's words. So it seems like this. This is what Rashi learns. The new King David is king.
Melech Mashiach.
The Melech Mashiach, the King Mashiach. The original King David remains Nasi, prince, in which he is like a secondary. So the way it learns in the Gemara simply would be like this. When Mashiach comes, there are two leaders. This new king, known as the Mashiach, and then he has a sidekick. He has a viceroy, and that viceroy is the old King David.
Isn't he a descendant? The new one?
Descendant.
Yeah, sure.
So the simple reading of the Gemara, David HaMelech of history will be viceroy to his great grandson,
Right.
Melech HaMashiach.
That's called Nasi. It doesn't say Melech, as Rashi points out.
So now comes the
Nasi,
big. Here's the big question that the Rebbe begins his pilpul on, which is there are other verses which state clearly that David HaMelech will be forever.
That's like Mili Shot Malkoi.
Yeah.
David was
So
that way.
the Gemara is stating that that David himself will be Nasi. I'll tell you if you want an exact verse.
So this, by the way, is the Haftarah and Parshas Vayikra.
Yeah, it's Haftarah. So and the Rebbe's pilpul comes on that Haftarah.
The two tribes. Remember, there are two tribes of 10 and two tribes. There are two types. Division of the Jewish people, and then it'll be no longer divided.
The problem is, see, the Gemara here says, Papa quotes the verse which says that David Avi Nasi L'Hem La'olam, that King David will be will be the Nasi, will be the prince, not the king, as in will be the viceroy. That's David HaMelech. But there's another pasuk which says clearly that David HaMelech himself will be king. You have to find that pasuk.
It's when the Migdal Yeshua Malkoi.
No, Yecheskel, the David Avdi Melech Aleim. My servant there will be a king upon them. It's a verse in Yecheskel, Lamed Chav Daled and Chafei, where the pasuk says clearly that David HaMelech himself will be the king. So you're picking one verse, and you're solving the contradiction by saying that one verse says Nasi, prince, and there's a secondary, and another verse says that he's going to be a new David. When there's a verse which clearly says David HaMelech himself will be the king. So you haven't solved the problem.
Yeah, it's true.
We're not looking at the whole pilpul and all the sources. Get straight to the point of how the Rebbe explains his Gemara. The Rebbe actually said we're talking about one person, but two different roles being fulfilled by one person. In one element, David Mashiach is king, and in one role, Mashiach is Nasi. Nasi, prince, was also the name of the exilarch, whose primary function was to teach Torah. So one role, Mashiach is king, a political leader, and the other one is a Torah leader. Two things, one's Melech and one's Nasi. And therefore, a Papa does not quote the verse which says that King David's going to be king, because you already told me that there's going to be a David called king. The contradiction is not, the way Rebbe's learning, that one verse says it's going to be another David, whereas this verse says it's David himself. We're talking about a new person who has one person who has the role of Mashiach. And the question becomes, you just told me that this new King David is going to have the role of king, but there's another verse that said he has the role of Nasi, he has the role of prince, he has the role of teacher. And the Gemara's answer is he has two roles. One role as king, and one role as teacher.
But the Gemara's understanding is as two different people, David and Melech.
Rebbe's learning this in Gemara.
Yeah, but the Pshat in Gemara with
Rebbe's learning this in the Gemara. The Gemara itself means that he has two roles. One role as king, and one role as Parsh and as viceroy. And that actually also says...
But obviously the Rashi understands differently.
Rebbe learns it in Rashi also. Rebbe learns it into Rashi also. Without explaining all the details of how it does it, Rebbe learns it in Rashi also. But one of the things that Rebbe points to is the fact that the Gemara says Kesar or Palga Kesar, as opposed to saying Melech V'Sheni Loi.
That's right.
Or Melech Mishne Melech. Why picking a Roman language, calling him Caesar? That was the whole explanation. But Mamish 1,000 questions that it has in this Gemara to explain. And the Rashi explains that it's talking about one person. He has two roles. You want to say something?
Was it not the case that, with respect to all kings of Israel, there was no separation of church and state?
Well, it's interesting because you had a Sanhedrin, which were the leaders of Torah, but the King David was also responsible to adjudicate. He's responsible to sit in court also. He was also a shofet, but the Sanhedrin can override him. There's actually three branches of government, if you will.
Also the
King of
Kuna.
Israel always carry a Torah with
Yes,
them.
so the king of Israel had to be...
Indicating that they were also...
They're bound by the Torah law.
They were all bound by Torah law, but they still had three different...
Constitution, so to speak.
Okay.
But there were three different
But that
roles.
doesn't necessarily mean that they were teachers. That just meant they were bound by the law when they
They're
held the
supposed
Torah.
to be teachers.
They were
Supposed to be teachers too.
they were teachers. That wasn't their primary function. Certainly not. The primary function was political as a king.
Okay.
Yeah, but they also had to be scholars. King David did sit in court. He passed questions.
Right.
He answered questions, but you had the Sanhedrin, the Kuna, and the kingdom.
Also had Nevi'im as well to be kind of like the fifth estate.
But they were like the.
If anything's off the rails, they can criticize the Sanhedrin or the.
That's right. They were not the established state.
No, not established. They have a kind of like loyal opposition, so to speak. Okay. So they keep track on all the different branches, make sure they're fulfilling their function. If not, then they have a right to criticize them.
Okay, so let's maybe just clarify what these two roles are: king and partial king. King and king and teacher. So the role of king is primarily political, where he's meant to keep world peace, establish the kingdom of David. And the role of Nasi is to learn Torah, to teach Torah. Now if you look at the Rambam, there's an interesting duality. Because Rambam actually does describe these two roles. The first thing he describes is that Mashiach comes to restore the Davidic line. And then later he says he's going to he's going to teach all the people and teach the whole world to follow Hashem. If you were to look at that description, you would conclude that the primary function of Mashiach, his primary goal, is the teaching of Torah and teaching of godliness. And the fact that he became king and restores peace and brings peace to the world is only in order that he can teach Torah, which would make his secondary role as Nasi more primary in a way. To teach Torah. And yet, it's only considered the secondary role. It's only considered the Nasi, the prince, the half-king, the viceroy, not the original. So that kind of makes a distinction between where's the bigger chiddush in what Mashiach does versus what's his primary function. Where's the biggest novelty in what Mashiach does versus his primary function. The bigger novelty is in his kingdom. How's that? Because there is no other king that was as successful as Mashiach will be. King David had many wars.
We didn't run the whole world yet.
And didn't run the whole world. Whereas even though the Rambam describes that the world will be no natural change, but world peace, no war, no hunger, that's something that never existed in the history of ever. So it's true, the biggest chidush, the biggest novelty, what Mashiach does, is in his role as Mashiach, as his role as king, role as melech. And therefore, the Rebbe points to David Acher, another David, not another David as another person, but David on a whole other level. Melech, David HaChadosh means a new David, like in Rashi's words, as in a King David on a whole new level.
Same person, but
it's the same person, Mashiach, not David himself, but it's a David HaChadosh to a whole new level. What King David was doing is running a country in a political sense, trying to keep peace. This is going to be in a whole new level. World peace, no hunger, no war, nothing. I mean, this is unheard of. So it's the greatest chiddush. But for what purpose? So that it can be Nasi. So that it can come to a secondary role, even though it's secondary in that it's not as big of a novelty, because Torah remains always Torah. The Torah we learn today is the same Torah Mashiach comes. In Koch, what's the word? Torah can't have change. It's forever. So the teaching of Torah is not the bigger chiddush. It's not the bigger novelty. The bigger novelty is in how he runs his political world, and that's world peace. But the fact that he's teaching is his primary role. And in other words, the bigger chiddush, the bigger novelty of making world peace is all to serve to the lesser novelty, which is a more primary function as Nasi, as prince, to teach Torah. That's what everyone understands. This Gemara, and 1,000 questions are answered based on this explanation. Yeah, that's why I began first, the simple, the literal.
Was chapter 30 you said? I want to look at it.
Here, the pasuk is.
I'm curious, very curious about
Where am I? Lost the page. It's 20. It's 20. Yecheskel 30, 24, and 25.
Okay, very good.
Look it up. David Abdi Melech Aleim. Okay, so that's one. The way everyone understands the Gemara, and the primary role of Mashiach again is to teach Torah. But the great novelty is that he's going to set the world up as king in such a way that he can teach Torah on a new level. So thanks to the chidush, thanks to the novelty.
30?
That's what it says here, unless they got it wrong. Yeah. 30, 24, 25, not there?
No. Above, maybe it's 37? Yeah, oh sorry, 37, yeah, same thing.
37, 20.
Yeah, 37, yeah, okay. Yes, yeah. That's the same story, yeah.
It's the same, it's a few lines before, it's not even far off. It's in the same area.
The question is very small.
And why choose this one, not the other one?
My behind.
Yeah.
Very true.
Now it's one of the big questions it begins on, which is the other questions.
That's true. That definitely has to be explained. What's the...
So if we were to define the role of...
If there's too much power, we're going to divide the people again. Huh?
So the primary role of Mashiach was just explained the primary role of Mashiach is to teach Torah.
Yeah.
That's his primary role. But teaching Torah has always been around. Where's the chiddush? Where's the novelty and what changes when Mashiach comes if his primary role is to teach Torah? There's many Torah leaders. So even though the primary role of Mashiach is to teach Torah, the big chiddush, the big novelty is that he's going to be a king that restores the world to such a point that he can teach Torah in a perfect fashion. So thanks to the novelty of his role as king, as melech, his role as nasi, his role as palgakeser, his role as teacher gets to a whole new level.
It's interesting the difference. When David is a nasi, it's called la'olam. When David's a melech, it doesn't say la'olam.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I have to look at the
temporal power.
I have to look at the
power,
exactly. When you're talking about Torah power, it's eternal. Not just eternal in the sense that it'll last forever, but eternal in the sense that it's infinite.
Yeah, that's a very interesting feeling.
Anyway,
yeah.
Okay, wonderful day, wonderful Shabbos.
Yeah, I'll just give you one gematria this week.
Yeah.
But the gematria of Avdi, by the way, is very nice to be called Avdi Hashem is 86 Elohim. It's a man of God.
Yeah. Avdi, Al Ayin Vez Daled Yud is the same as
86 Elohim.
Very nice.
But there are very few people who were called Avdi.
Moshe Avdi, David Avdi.
David, Yaakov, but very few in Tanakh. And
who else? Moshe, David, and
Moshe, Yaakov.
Yaakov Avdi, yeah.
Even Zerubbabel is called Avdi. We went through it. A few people got called Avdi.
Look at the Concordinitza.
Yeah.
I can find it.
Look it up. And David is definitely has. Here he has in two roles now, both as a melech and a nasi.
Right. So in everybody's understanding, when you say David in the future time, it's actually talking about Mashiach, not David himself.
Yeah.
But what role he's playing and which role
two
he.
roles.
Right.
Melech and nasi.
Melech and nasi.
And one's a
That's right.
Yeah.
One as a political leader on a whole new level. That's the big chiddush, the big novelty, and that
teachers.
sets himself up to be a teacher. Which there always were teachers, but thanks to his role as the perfect king, he can teach on a level that was never taught before.
Yeah.
May it happen without delay. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Sure.